A very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you and welcome again to another Ipsos webinar session. Today is a very special topic. We have the creative fightback as a topic, and we have two special team members of ours that will be presenting. We have Gaurav Singh, who is our APEC specialist for creative excellence, and we have Saufang, who is the country lead for creative excellence that will be talking to you with regards to the topic in hand. Just some ground rules. My name is Niktasha and I'll be your host and moderator for today. If you have any questions, you are all on mute. So if you have any questions, please do put it in the Q&A box at any time. Once we have finished the session, we would actually read those questions and our panelists would answer. If you have any questions that you would like us to answer at a one-to-one level, please do email us. The email address will be at the final slide later. It looks like we're ready to start actually, and I think just a summary of what's going on with the current situation. Communication now has become vital and we need to stay relevant at any single juncture of how we do business. What we need to know is how to communicate as and when it needs to be communicated, and how is that being received and reciprocated by the consumers. As business, we need to make sure that there's no misstep in the communication. If not, it will have a detrimental ripple effect. From that, in terms of the data perspective, which is why we are presenting today to you. And our first speaker is Gaurava, and over to you, Gaurava. Thank you.
Thanks, Tasha. Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to all of you. I hope you all are staying safe and strong. So this is Gaurav, as Tasha introduced. I lead creative excellence for Ipsos for the APAC region. And I'm very pleased to be joined by my colleague Saufang, who leads creative excellence for Malaysia and has been working closely with many of you on your creative development journey. So for some of you who may not be aware, creative excellence is Ipsos's specialized team that helps all its clients bring back the magic by helping them throughout their creative development journey, which actually starts right from early stage, from message, idea, early forms of stimuli, to creative assessment, which is more of pre-testing, copy testing, and to in-market. Once the campaign is on air, then you evaluate the performance of the campaign. So we as Creative Excellence are basically looking after that particular specialized division. So it is it's great to be here sharing with you Ipsos's thoughts on current unprecedented COVID times and how as a brand or advertiser, you should make the creative fight back through the right response and communication during the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, and I would say even beyond. So it's all about trying to understand what could be the better way to respond to the current situation. So if you look at the next, which is primarily like all of us would agree that we are in fluid times, very unprecedented time due to COVID-19 crisis. A large proportion of the world's population is in lockdown. People cannot move around freely. And I'm not just experiencing an economic crisis, but I would say it's a life crisis where they fear for lives as much as livelihoods. So this is something which has led to a fluid, low-touch time. There's no way we can now depend on whatever was considered as the normal in the past, because whatever those automatic behaviors of the past are no longer valid now. So when we look in terms of specifics, so what all has changed is that it's not only the physical context or the social context, which is like lots of restricted movements, social norms and ways of engaging have changed, but also for us as individuals in terms of how do we process information, what are our current motivation levels, and more importantly, what are our ability to adopt to this new order. There has been an impact on that. So what it means for us as brands and advertisers is primarily because it all has influence on our decision-making and brand choice. And thus, it has a direct impact on the brands which we are operating in or which we are consuming. So as most of you will agree that usually in any action plan, to influence the decision-making of the brand choice at the consumer's end, creativity or the communication plays an important role. And that's what is very important for us to understand how best we can respond and communicate in these times. Yep. So, so the one question for most of you would be at this point in time, given the things have changed, does creativity still matter? So to that, our response would be is that we at Ipsos strongly believe that the fact that creative effectiveness drives growth is still very valid, and there are lots of evidence. So as you would see some of the statistics on the chart, whether we look at the IPA data, which is the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising, or we look at market share gains due to creatively awarded campaigns, or even if we look at the stock market performance, and even by looking at the various analysis which we have done at Ipsos, in terms of the ads that have performed well, tend to do really well in the market upon launch. So that clearly sums up the fact that yes, the times have changed, but the creativity is still going to play an important role. So, but then yes, we realize that creative effectiveness has a role to play, but what about the effectiveness of creativity in the current times? Okay, so uh, on this, first thing which we want to say is that going dark is not the answer. So, and what we look at it from an angle that when we speak to and when we talk to various marketers, leading industry thinkers, and CMOs, we clearly see that is a thought which is coming out from all the corners. So a lot has been written and talked about on this, but let me just pick two and I'll talk about that very quickly. So one is, as you would see on the screen, one is about Mark Ritson, who is a professor, very well renowned, who has spoken in various business schools around the world, has produced quite a few articles, papers over the last few months. And in one of them, he has rightly said, keep the brand light burning, because the cost of snuffing it out for the rest of 2020 and then trying to reignite it next year is gigantic. So basically he's trying to say that if you miss on this particular time and the brand is not present in the mind of consumers, you're going to lose a lot. And then to reignite the same thing, go back to the same level is going to cost a lot. The second is we saw similar statements from General Mills CEO, Jeff Hammingen, who said that I think it can also provide a normalcy for people, because it also goes back to the fact that the lives have changed, as I talked about initially. So the consumers and everyone is looking for normalcy. So he says that advertising can also provide a sense of normalcy for people. For us, then it's a responsibility to do that, whether it is for delivering our products or whether it is advertising cinnamon toast crunch. That's something which is in words. So, and then he went on to say that people are longing for normalcy, and that as a company, him and his board has already taken a decision that they are going to invest now more than less. So these are some of the leading marketers and thinkers, industry players who are talking in that particular tone. But the key for us was to see whether these opinions are supported by hard data as well. So what we did is we looked at some of the financial data of the past financial recessions, whether it is 20s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. And when we look in terms of those data points, we clearly see that the companies that maintain or increase advertising spend, they see higher sales lifts than those who cut. So there's something, as you would see from the blue bar, is basically is the information on the advertisers that have maintained or increased their ad spends during recession or crisis. So it's a combination of two things, as what leading thinkers, the practitioners who have been in the business, who have gone through the various ups and downs on what their thoughts are, at the same time looking at in terms of what the previous data points are supporting, is clearly one thing which is coming out is that going dark is not the answer. It's key for us as a brand and marketers to see how we can maintain or increase advertising spend. Yep. So when we look in terms of this is the term which you all would have come across, the new normal. So yes, many of us might say that this crisis is different than those in the past. But for that point of time, as you all will appreciate, that particular crisis recession was unique. And the one learning which stayed common across all those crises ranging from 20s to now, that the brand needs to be present. So that's what I was talking about in terms of why as a brand we need to be present and salient and stay invested in all the relationship you as a marketer have built over time, because giving a gap is means that you need to put in extra efforts to bring it all back to the previous levels as it was. So and we at Ipsos also believe that it's also a unique window whereby maintaining brand presence by staying relevant, brands can actually benefit and gain further trust. And most importantly, all that has much reduced media costs, because the cost of media buying is actually much lower than as it was. So it actually allows us to create the same kind of buzz in the current times at a much lower investment. And just to quote an example of one of the leading advertiser, which is P&G, has also decided to do exactly the same. And they seem to be benefiting from their decision by continuing to invest, continuing to build saliency for their brands, talking about how they are relevant in the current times. And as a result of that, we are also seeing many other brands seeing merit in ensuring saliency and building stronger brand relationship. So with this initial background in terms of why going dark is not the answer and what the various thinkers and data points are suggesting, let me pass on to Saofang, who is going to talk about what brands are doing right now, what are the consumers' expectations, and how should brands respond in current times.
Thank you, Gaurav. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hope you are doing well. I'm Saofang here. Now, let's try to understand on how should brands respond in COVID times. Well, key to any solution or action would be to first understand actually what do consumers expect from us as a brand. And we know through our research that majority of the consumers expect brands to play a role during the crisis. Hence, we would like to stress again that going dark could be a poor strategic choice. As rightly observed by Owen Lee, who is the CEO for SCB Inferno, we see that most of the brands have all the right intention. They really want to help. However, they are nervous about appearing to make profit from the crisis in these challenging times. Hence, it's very critical for brands to strike a fine balance between helping people and carry on with the business to avoid any perception around profiteering in the times when lives and livelihood are at risk. And we do have quite a few of examples of how brands across the globe have risen to the occasion. First is Coke. Coke is the perfect example of brand showing the empathy and seen to be giving comfort. While for Nike, also making a point on the need to recognize and affirm new social norms. And many other brands also taking it to the next level, helping build new rituals at home, where everyone is supposed to be to fight the virus, staying home, and staying safe. And even in Malaysia, we also see many brands actually are working hard and giving a creative spin to their logos to reflect the impact of COVID-19 and encourage Malaysians to stay at home and opt for delivery when it comes to food. So here we see the brand like Ali Mutu and Ahok, Papa Rich, Nando's, Starbucks, Burger King, and KFC. They are giving the creative spin with their icon mascot are no longer where to be found in their logo now. Also, we know that social distancing is another big thing, and many popular brands like TM, Petronas, Indie, McLean, and Cellcom, etc., they also have given a fun twist to their logo and also some of the digital posts to raise awareness about social distancing. These are just few examples, but many other brands actually are doing their best to support and also encourage adherence to the new social norms. Well, we also noticed that while many brands have gone silent during this challenging time, few of them, like Pro Balance and Coca-Cola, decided to go ahead with new advertisement and creative that actually are really staying relevant to the current context and also with consumers' current lifestyle. Well, to be able to respond well and effectively, it is very important actually to understand what is consumers' expectation and also then build the campaign accordingly. Consumer expectation actually align with core principles for communication in a crisis and environment. And it is actually similar even during the COVID crisis as well. The key expectations are centered around credibility, authenticity, relevance, empathy, and contribution. On the credibility, the expectation is about giving assurance that you are not going anywhere, but you are taking care of your employees. While on authenticity, consumers expect brands actually to continue to using their regular voice, your usual story, and avoiding the sea of sameness. When it comes to relevancy, it's all about acknowledging that the current context and responding in the ways that most relevant to their consumers, products, or even the categories. When it comes to empathy and contribution, the expectations are more around being supportive, helping the societies, for example, the employees, in whatever ways that it can. While many of us are saying that this crisis is different or very different than other one, so it was important to have a gauge of what are current people's expectations. Well, we have done lots of research and will continue to do a lot more in this space. And what we see is that actually people expect brands to help people, as majority is of the opinion that companies have a social responsibility to offer help even during this crisis like COVID-19. And despite a serious concern for their life and their livelihoods, people actually are pretty receptive towards advertising. And what we see that is nearly 3 out of 5 people seems to be open and very receptive towards advertising even in today's climate. So then, what about people's expectation when it comes to advertising? From the research, it showed that people want to feel safe and secure, and also reassurance that things will go back to normalcy, but also that it makes them feel good, positive, which is a good sign. And we also noticed that only very few actually say that we should stop or even cut advertising. Well, in the midst of the concern for their lives and their livelihoods, what are people looking for in the contents that they view? It seems that they certainly want normalcy in these uncertain times. So they want entertainment and escapism, while also they are somewhat polarized in keeping up to date with the latest news. In that case, so what are we seeing at the moment? Well, globally, we have evaluated 10 different ads using our new methodology, Creative Sparks, very quickly last 2 weeks. And these were the COVID communication ads from various different industries. And the results were extremely mixed. Is that very surprising to you? Well, probably not, because a lot of advertisers actually they are making huge efforts. They get this ad developed in days. They don't have the luxury to produce them. They have no times for review. They are just breaking all the conventions and are aiming to get on air as soon as possible. Well, though the times have changed for us, but one thing that does not change is that creative quality is supreme and it still matters. And what we actually saw was that 8 out of 10 ads had a very weak ability to memorize for the advertised brand. So actually what that means is that the cognitive immunity is setting in. Well, and in layman's term, it means that for any average person, it will probably forget all of those ads being aired because they are just too generic and more or less the same as others. Hence, it's very important not to get in the sea of sameness and rather create differentiation and come up with advertising that they are aligned with consumers' expectation. For example, bring back the sense of normalcy and also reassure that you are taking all the necessary precautions to protect your consumers from the virus. Well, now, let me now hand over to Gaurav again, who will talk about how we can bring it all to life through our communications. First to you, Gaurav.
Uh, Thanks, Saofang. So having heard from Saofang on what some brands are doing right now, what are their expectations in terms of advertising, in terms of what are their content, what they're looking for. Let me talk about some of our pointers that might be useful while building your campaign or communication in the current times. So the three key principles we would recommend to keep in mind while working on creatives in these times. One was about the need to be authentic and faithful to what your brand stands for. So it's very important that we stay true to what the brand has been all about, and that will also not only give the sense of urgency and normalcy, but also is in terms will give the confidence that you are already delivering what they are looking for. The second is another important bit is about act first before telling it. Because there have been instances where the brands have jumped the whole COVID brand wagon. They have talked about what they should do, but when it comes to actually delivering it on ground, there has been some loopholes. So one of the things is very important that we need to see what consumers want. They want brands to take action and not just talk. So it's very important to take note of the action. So I'll take you through some of the examples on more details about each of these. The third would be a critical aspect of it is, as Saofang initially talked about, need to avoid the sea of sameness. So that can come only by ensuring that we find the right story, and also by striking the right tone, because people do not like to see advertisers capitalizing on this crisis. So as she talked about, profiteering is something which is a concern with brands and marketers as well. And even the consumers would want to hear from brands in a way that they don't see that they are trying to capitalize on the crisis, but they are rather being very sensitive to the fact that we are in difficult times. So that's where the angle of right story and right tone becomes very important. So in nutshell, the key goes back to in terms of how we can give assurance to consumers that your brand is there for them. And it will still be there once the crisis is over and we will be back to normal. Because yes, the current times, last few months have been difficult, but yes, there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel and we all go back to normal. So thus we need to continue communicating, but in a different way, which is much closer to people's feelings. So the empathy and trying to see that we empathize with them, we are sensitive to their needs and thoughts becomes very important. So on the first point, which is the need to be authentic and faithful, let me share two great examples, and that too from one of the most badly hit sector, which is aviation. So first is, as you see, and some of you would have had a look at it, is Emirates Do You Remember campaign. So even if Emirates is grounded like all other airlines, through their communication, they're still trying to nurture everyone's desire for quarantine to end and go back enjoying life, friends and travels, which is all they have been about. So the key is being true to what you have been and trying to bring in the context of the current COVID and to give them the hope that things are going to be normal and Emirates is going to be there with them. Okay. The second is a good example, which is from Malaysia itself, which is from Malaysian Airlines, with pilots and crews coming out with Don't Rush Challenge, which is all about telling Malaysians and other guests that until we spread our wings and meet you again in the skies, stay home, stay safe, stay strong. So again, the whole essence of the messaging has been that we are in this together, and which is quite in line with the brand's Malaysian hospitality messaging. So it's very good to see that the two sectors which have been most severely impacted, they're still trying to give the hope, trying to stay true to what the brand has been all about. So second, the point which I talked about is about making sure that you act and do. So this is one of the key expectation, which is all about action. People expect brands to not only promise or say, but also to act and do. So donation of products, some examples of this so-called action could be donation of products and services, PPEs, masks, support to needy, innovative services, solutions, and actions to support the employees and not laying them off are some of the actions expected. And this becomes very critical for a brand to strike to find a fine balance between driving business forward and not being seen profiteering. And as you would recall, initially, as we shared some data points, it's very important for us to not being seen profiteering. So these are some of the action points. And as you see, one of the things which is coming out quite clearly and quite consistently is about taking care of the employees. So if you look in terms of some other details on what these action points could be, so in simpler terms, the consumers seem to be considering three things very helpful and supportive. One is about action-oriented informative help, which is like we are done with concerns. We need assurance, tangible action on how they plan to be with them now and post-COVID. Second is about brands being part of the solution, clearly showcasing the actions being taken to keep going, innovating, COVID-proofing their products or services. What else? What next? So rather than getting stuck at this point of time, thinking of the brands, the consumers are appreciating and they will appreciate something which shows what's the life beyond COVID and how we can continue to live the life normally beyond that. And the third, as we talked about, is about how the brands are giving back. How are they supporting the society at large, and which primarily starts with their own employees, because that's one of the key expectation there as well. So those were the two things, and probably I would say, and from Ipsos's point of view, the most important of it all would be the need for right story and the right tone to come up with a campaign that can help the brand stand out and best engage the consumers. So as we saw that we tested 10 ads, 8 of them did not perform well. They were stuck in that being too generic. So it's very important for us to still make the best of the current times, the situation, and trying to differentiate our brand. So 5 things, again, while we, this is something which again came from consumers, is a few things which we can include as brands and marketers. One would be infusing positivity and optimism. Some of the comments when we spoke to them was that I would enjoy hearing things that are optimistic or show a brighter future for our community. So it's all about giving the hope. Second is about fighting boredom with fun and laughter. So I still want to laugh and have fun and do some of my normal activities. I don't need doom and gloom every moment, because all of us, I think we can relate to it. Everywhere where we go, we are exposed to that, and the consumers are expecting that the brands and marketers through their communication are going to change that. Third is about giving them ideas and support for coping. So people run out of ideas on how to manage things at home, outside. So it's all about helping them figure out where to go from here. Everything, for example, a mom has to juggle with. They have no support system because everybody is locked down in their home. So some of the ideas on how to cope with the current situation is also something which could be very well appreciated. The fourth point is about reassurance and calmness. So it's all about the ads which are being shared or coming out by the brands should have a reassuring and calming agenda rather than that of opportunistic sales. So I think there's something we talked about, how do we strike a fine balance between driving the business at the same time being sensitive to a consumer's need. And the fifth was all about reinforcing sense of community. Like how do we can help build a community, compassion, coming together and giving a feel though that we are quite distant, but still we can bring all of this together and help each other. So these are some of the things which we can take note of while we are working on our creative and the story, and to better engage with the consumers in the current times. So what I also wanted to do is to share with you some of the examples of brands that have leveraged their strength quite well, and they have made, say, the best of some of the pointers which we talked about. So one is in US, an ad by Ford, which they launched a couple of weeks ago, which was titled as Built to Lend a Hand. So this ad communicates about how Ford has helped generations of Americans in the past and is going to help its customers even at this point of time on dealing with their leased rates, because as we all know, financial implications are huge. Everyone is looking for payment relief. So the whole idea was that building a hand, lending a hand in this current crisis, and waiving off some of the payment options so that the consumers are able to continue with their current life as normally as they could possibly do. So this ad actually helped Ford reinforce their brand equity and connect with the consumers in the times of crisis. So I'll pick another one, which is on the hotels.com. This is where they developed an ad centered around their historic humorous tone and destructive campaign assets with Captain Obvious. So as some of you will be familiar that hotels.com generally comes up with the Captain Obvious as the key character, and they try to add humor and fun to the current stressful and gloomy situation. So just taking some pointers in terms of what are the things we can do, finding the right story and the tone, and then coming up with the communication could actually lead to much stronger brand engagement in these current times. So with this, let me also address another important question which might be coming into your minds is about that since the times are unprecedented and they are not normal by any means, is there any impact on creative effectiveness metrics? So like, should we actually invest in trying to find out how the creative is performing, or we should just go ahead and launch something based on whatever we do? So as Shaofeng had shared those examples, yes, some brands went ahead and launched the campaigns, 8 out of 10 failed, and they were not able to create the desired impact. So it's very important to rely on, again, data rather than just some of the point of views. So what we did, we looked at the data from the past, and we looked in terms of the pre-test measures. And what we found, interestingly, that there has been stability in times of economic crisis. So while no period in recent history is quite like the present one, we can point to our experience during the global economic crisis of 2008 and 2009. So that's something which we used as one of the latest reference point. So despite major declines in consumer sentiment compared with the preceding year, which is 2007, scores for creative pre-test evaluation actually remained consistent during the recession. So this was true for most of the key measures, which is around even on driving the brand attention or leading to the desired behavior change, which we expect a communication to do, either to get noticed or to lead to a call to action. So that is something which was very encouraging to see that there was not much of impact. So what we did, we also did similar analysis for some of our leading clients in the current COVID times and also in the region. And we also do not see any adverse impact on KPI scores. And that has been quite reassuring for our clients, especially those who decided not to cut their advertising spends, because one of the concerns would have been that we are spending and then are the measures still holding true? So the key there was that to go for an approach which is more of point in time, which factors the context, which takes context into consideration, rather than which is based on something which is normative or based on past database, because the context has changed. So the whole test control, exposed, not exposed approach really helps. And that's something which is quite visible from the data which we have captured. So what we did as a result of that, we also came up with some guidelines around creative research during COVID times. And our perspective is that if you have the intention to launch a campaign in the next coming few months, now more than ever, we would say that you need to ensure that you are considering the very new context we all are in, all our consumers are in. So in that point of time, our recommendation would be to actually see that how consumers are responding to the particular campaign, whichever you are planning to in the current times. So this is a point of which we have put together, is available for public knowledge. And if you're interested, we can share that, and you can also some draw learnings and may benefit from it. And what we have also done is in terms of to see that how the solutions can still be relevant, because in this part of the world, we had been very much face-to-face traditional. It's important to come up with the solutions which are COVID-proof and which can help you identify key insights while keeping the consumer safety in mind, because that's also one of the concern in face-to-face or CLT-based approach. So we have certain solutions throughout the creative development journey, and I'm sure you will come across many of them. So, but the most important thing would be to see that how we can continue to diagnose any misstep in creative related to environmental conditions or impact of COVID-19. So what we have done and what we would recommend to you while you are coming up with any creative research is to think of a couple of questions which could be added to any of your creative evaluation research. The idea would be to understand whether the current creative or the idea which you have in mind is appropriate for the current times, because that is something which we really need to assess. It's important to factor that in as we develop the creative. And the second would be to also to measure claimed personal impact of the crisis, because eventually the purpose of advertising into influence individuals into make certain actions. So if the results are as such or whatever they are, we need some more data points to contextualize the response and make the necessary amends in the creative if anything is required. So that's something we will recommend, and many of our clients are actually doing that, and they see benefit of incorporating these questions for a better understanding of the current situation, because there is not much of history on what has happened due to this crisis. So coming to the end of from the session, so I would just want to leave you with some of the key takeaways from our perspective. So what we would say, definitely that going dark is not the answer. It's very important for us to keep an eye on consumers through proper advertising research, communication research, because it's very important to hear from them, to understand what they think and how they respond, because that would then help you as advertisers find the right balance between the message, ideas, and of course, the tonality. All of that by taking into consideration the current context we all are in. So what we would advise you is that please stay active, pay importance to creativity, avoid the sea of sameness, because there is no point burning your money on campaigns which are similar, which are not true, not authentic, and people do not recall that. And since the times are challenging and quite unpredictable, we would recommend to stay prepared for fluidity, because the things change on a daily basis. So it's important to factor in that fluidity while you are coming with your creative plans and say touch point as well. And think for some alternatives, keep thinking of new innovative ways to engage your customers as the things evolve. So that is primarily from us today. So it's all about staying safe, staying strong, and staying active in the minds of your consumers. So for any thoughts, any point of view discussions around creativity, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. So, yep.
Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you so much, Saofang, for the very comprehensive summary. I see two questions here. You can still ask the questions if you can put it in the Q&A box or in the chat box, or raise your hand. We will address them. But Saofang and Gaurav, we have two questions at the moment. Question one is, in our everyday experience these days, we are listening from the clients and the companies we are in touch with. We see that many advertisers are pausing their activities and campaigns. What would Ipsos's advice be on advertisers given the current situation? The second question that we have here from the panelists is, as we agree that we are in unprecedented times, which is the data clearly shows, with no historical experience behind it, like the present one, how can we ensure that we continue to diagnose the impact of COVID-19 through creative evaluation research? So let's answer these two questions while we wait for other questions to come in.
Sure, thanks, Tasha. Very good questions. So let me answer the first question, and Saofang can take on the second. So I would take the question on some advice to advertisers who are pausing their activities at campaigns. So I would say yes, we have to rely on what the leading marketers and industry experts are saying, because as we heard from some of them, they have talked about the need to continue communicating. The second is also to rely on the previous data, as we showed. And even when we heard from our sources, the various research which we have done, people who we have spoken with, that actually people want some sort of normalcy. They want to hear from brands at this moment. Going quiet again lets them, most of the world is in lockdown, everybody is just confined to their four walls. So it's important to keep this normalcy conversation going. The communication also, if done right, also gives them a sense of positivity. So it's very important for us as brands and marketers to think of that delicate balance of the right tone on what you say and what is your strategy, because it again goes back to staying true to what the brand stands for. So authenticity also comes into play. So definitely it does not seem like the same old communication as we have been doing before is going to work, but it needs to be thought through in the context we are in right now. So from our perspective, clearly there's no evidence that growing dark is the answer. It is actually the contrary, and thus we would advise to stay active and most importantly avoid the sea of sameness, as I talked about. Yep. So Safan, you want to take the second? Yep.
Yeah, actually, for this second question, I have been receiving from client like in this 1 month. So yeah, we understand that current situation actually is definitely a new situation and also a new context for us. So what we would recommend is that we would recommend the advertiser to actually to rely more on the approach that which is more point in time than the normative. And also, well, and for our creative evaluation approach, how we approach it is that we use approach like the test and control comparison, or probably the expose and not expose comparison, which can help to get a clearer understanding of the creative potential and also the effectiveness in the current context, instead of comparing with the norms. And also, like the sharings like shared by Gaurav earlier, actually at this point in time, for any pre-testing, it will be good that you can add in some COVID-specific questions to actually to gauge the appropriateness of the creative and also the impact on the consumer's behavior of to help the brands and also the researchers to contextualize the responses and also make the necessary amends in the creative as required. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. I don't see any further questions. So what we will do after this is actually send across the deck to all the attendees. Thank you so much again to the panelists. Just a quick note to say that these are the key pertinent questions and messages that we have here at Ipsos that we can address and we can help you with. We understand that looking at the list today, you come from varying different sectors, and each sector will have similar or different a proportion of situation now, but all is important with the understanding of the data moving forward. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see you at our next webinar session, hopefully next week. Stay safe, keep well, and any questions, as usual, please do not hesitate to reach us. On behalf of Ipsos, we would like to thank you and speak to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Stay safe.
Yeah, bye.